Hey guys, you made it to episode 2 of Design Over Time. This is a new video series that we are doing in order to talk about game design topics on a daily basis. The videos will be about 10-15 minutes long, and it's just over whatever I've been thinking about or playing or talking about recently. And today we have a really interesting game called Luftrausers. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I found this game on Steam. It's something that we had studied previously on Design Oriented. If you remember way back when we were still rolling with the blog, and I want to talk about a few topics, but first thing to do is just kind of hop right in and show you what the game looks like. So I'm going to switch over. So right now I've unlocked almost everything in the game, and but this game is pretty much one mode that you play over and over. So I'm going to just start flying around. This is the default ship, so there's nothing crazy going on. And as you can see, when you get hit, you automatically regen health, as indicated by the concentric circle that kind of closes in on the screen. And when it gets all the way closed, you only have one hit left to live. Otherwise, you can fly around left and right, turn your ship, and then only up on the D-pad. Hopefully you're playing with the D-pad. Propels you. So it's all about managing your vertical, horizontal position, your momentum, flying around, doing this kind of thing, dodging lots of bullets. These tiny little ships are easy to destroy, keep your combo going, but they kind of stop spawning. I can hear off the screen right now a battleship, and you can see that curtain of bullets happening. So the battleships like to follow your movements pretty heavily. So we'll see what it looks like to try to take on a battleship. Oh shoot, that's an ace pilot. Battleships also like to lead their shots, as do these guys. Let's see, so you can fly pretty high in the sky, all the way up, bullets kind of follow you. And your bullets kind of go all the way to the bottom of the screen. So as you can see here. Ooh, flying in bullets, not the best idea. Destroyed that ace pilot by ramming him partially. Another battleship, golly. And there we go, destroy that one. Destroy this ace pilot here. Oop, that's a big turn. Shot him. So as you can see, when you survive long enough, which I just didn't, more enemies, bigger enemies spawn in, crazy stuff starts happening, bullets everywhere. You pretty much only have the same offense that you have from the start. So you don't get any other weapons, you don't get any power-ups, you don't get any extra lives. This is all just however many points you can get in the one go you got. That's how the game works. And let's kind of jump right back to the notes so I can explain some things. And here we go. So Luftrausers. So one of the things I wanted to first talk about was this feeling of flight, and I think Luftrausers does this way better than so many other games where you are flying a ship.
That wasn't flying, that was falling with style.
Beyond those classic shmups like R-Type and things like that, and Gradius, where you're flying around. Luftrausers gives you more gravity to play around with, and gravity I think is a big deal when trying to convey this feeling of flight. So the three things I think that you need to get the same kind of feeling out of flying. You need a sense of gravity, you need a sense of momentum to your ship, so that turning and the speed you put into it matters, and you can't just stop on a dime and turn around. And sense of propulsion, so you need directional propulsion. It's really what gives your ship, your plane forward momentum, and that's usually the thing that you're mitigating. And even though you can turn fairly well, that forward momentum is kind of a big deal.
Hey, Buzz! You're flying!
This isn't flying, this is falling with style.
And for going into free fall and then reactivating your propulsion, I think it's really important. So Luftrausers does all three of these really well. And another game that it reminded me of is this old demo that a friend of mine, Alex Cho Snyder, threw up on the internet a long time ago. I wrote a blog post, it looks like this, on critical gaming mechanics and interface, just talking about some basic mechanical stuff and how it creates a game feel and all these different things based on how you design your player controls and all of that, and how just with one button, this little demo where you control a bird, does a lot to create this sense of flight, where you have to flap repeatedly by hitting the button, like in Super Mario Bros. 3 and the raccoon tail. and then when you let go, he just kind of dips, and if you hold the button, he does a dive, and the bird, whatever. And if you touch an object, the bird reverses. So moving right along, we are going to talk about a few systems and rules. That's why this light blue color is here. And one thing I also like about Luftrausers is it links offense and movement. So in a game like Geometry Wars, and let me see if I can find a clip. So in a game like Geometry Wars, your ship, you can move independently, and then you can fire in any direction independently, and firing has absolutely no drawbacks to your movement. So you pretty much learn how to move completely independently of your firing, and then fire completely independently of your moving, and then you try to do both at once, and that's the main challenge. Looking ahead and seeing what enemies are coming up and then firing in different ways is one of the most interesting parts about this game. But for me, I like it a little different. I like it when games link your offense and defense, and the rules that do that are these dynamic rules, as we talked about before. Any rule that links multiple game elements or actions together, we talk about that relationship, that link in between them as a dynamic. So light blue color, it creates a very stop and pop like gameplay the more that you link your offense with your movement. And in Luftrausers, you can only fire forward, so you can't just run away from ships and shoot behind you. It naturally encourages swooping attacks like a real fighter pilot. You saw that in the video in the front. It naturally encourages you to line up your shots, and because enemies are also doing the same, a lot of them are, it creates these head-on attacking moments which are really dramatic and interesting. It creates an opportunity for these last-second bailouts. It creates these moments where enemies are on your tail and you can't shake them very well, so you are completely on the defensive because you can't fire behind you. And it makes these opportunities where the enemies you miss, and then you're curving around each other to sort of realign your aim, and that's all really interesting because the play space in Luftrausers is absolutely huge. I mean, I'll show you a little bit more. Boop. So the play space is huge. You can go up all the way up here. The clouds kind of damage you, come back down. Go all the way down here. You can dip into the water a little bit, come back out, and then it's infinitely scrolling left and right. Or I think it's really important for a lot of shoot 'em ups to have anti-spam design, and you don't really want to make your game have a primary action. Like for this game, it's shooting. Aside from moving, you don't want the primary action to be something the player just holds the button down from start to finish and never lets go, because there's absolutely no drawbacks or nothing for them to consider beyond keep firing. A lot of games do stuff with reloading. A lot of games put charge mechanics in there. But what Luftrausers does is, hey, you have one kind of shot per ship when you're playing. You don't get any upgrades, no power-ups, nothing. So we're going to link it to your defense, which is an automatic healing that's done in a lot of modern shooters. But in this game, if you're firing, your healing happens very slowly or not at all. I'm not sure which one it is, but you pretty much need to stop firing in order to heal yourself. So that links those two elements of design together, and I prefer this for a game like this than creating stop and pop or slowing down your movement when you're firing. So it keeps all your offense strong, but if you want to maintain your defense, you have to lay off the offense, and that's still an interesting trade-off. This game has an interesting design space. You can customize your ship in the hangar, and you can customize your ship along three major types: weapon, engine, and body, which is essentially offense, movement, and defense, which is all you do in this game. So okay, so here is the laser with the hover engine and dropping the bombs. As you can see, if you just attack, the bombs drop automatically. If I let go of the forward button on the controller, my ship still cruises forward. That's because I'm in the hover engine, and it just kind of almost goes forever. You almost never have to keep adding power to it. See that? Moving targets are hard to hit for you and your opponents. These enemies. Now the battleships are here. So I could hear the ship being hit off the screen. But it's hard. The ships move when you are off the screen. They're constantly moving like left and right, and you're constantly moving. And then their aim is constantly changing, so it's really hard to get a pinpoint their position. And because the camera always follows you, you have to get pretty close in order to figure out where the threats are coming. Like right here, I'll get pretty close, kill that ship, and then now I'm hitting the ship. Now I'm not. Let's jump back in. So customization is good. So the main thing I want to talk about is the enemy design. The game looks pretty simple, but the enemy design is kind of complex. It's cool stuff like crashing into the enemy is generally good for the player. One enemy, any more than one, you'll probably lose too much health. When things get crazy, you can use all the health you can get. But at least when it's hard to hit certain enemies, crashing into them helps. Enemies are all reactive. So they aim at you, they move towards you. Everything they do is based on your position, always, all the time. This is generally a good thing for top-down games with a lot of space because players have a lot of real estate that they can move around in, and if you made your enemies too straightforward, like they only move in a straight line, or like a Goomba from Mario Bros, they'll probably never hit you. Right, so enemies are all reactive. They fly towards you all the time. They shoot towards you all the time. They move according to your position. They aim according to your position. And like Mega Man 10 boss design versus Mega Man 9 boss design, Mega Man 10 boss design, the bosses were made with a little bit of reactive elements for every single one of them, I believe. So Commando Man's missiles, Blade Man's blades that he throws, Strike Man's baseball bombs that he throws at you, everything. Less so Pump Man, but who cares about Pump Man? You know, there are plenty of small moments in the boss design where the bosses throw something at a set distance, something at a set distance, but then they always do something that's reactive towards you. So in this case, the boss throws two metal blades, buzzsaws, gear grinds, but then he always jumps at Mega Man's position. So this is just kind of the basic idea of when you design reactive enemies, you have sort of an odd control, as I call it. You can control where things happen and sort of when things happen, and it's not just about your position attacking the opponent, but your position is also your best defensive tool as well. So the enemies in Luftrausers, they always know your position, whether you're on or off screen, and enemies are pretty accurate. They, like the lower level enemies shoot around you, which can be good or bad. You know, sometimes a non-direct hit you'll fly into because you think they're going to hit you directly, and that just happens. But the camera drifts slightly in the direction of oncoming bullets. This is something that the designers of the game talked about when they detailed their particular brand of game feel. So I'll show that here. We wrote an article series on the Vlambeer style of game feel and juiciness, and ranked their own games according to a scale that they made. So you can read all about game feel and feedback design on our blog series. I'll provide links later, but there's an interesting talk that they made, and they mentioned that the camera slightly moves in the direction of the player, or in incoming bullets, when you can't see them coming from off screen. It's a really neat effect that looks really cool, but it ultimately gets it becomes ineffective because the entire screen is filled with bullets and enemies, and the subtle movement of the camera really is not something that can be maintained. So we're talking about design space now. We talked a little bit about feedback design, that's the purple color. We talked about enemy design, that's red, but now we're in design space. And we need to talk about fairness. So, in general, getting good in Luftrausers involves controlling your movement. That's a big deal. Controlling your movement is the first thing you need to get really good at. And then it's learning how to move and shoot. So as you can see when I'm playing, like, I can control the ship where I want to and dodge bullets and shoot enemies pretty precisely, whether they're on or off screen, kind of track them as I move. Tracking things from your ship as you move in different ways takes a while to get used to because it's a really complex timing. I mean, you're trying to hit a moving object with a moving object as you move. So that can get pretty complex as you are triangulating a lot of relative speeds. But you get really good at it. The second thing is, you know, getting good at aiming, and the third thing is that you have to learn how to fly in a way that keeps you out of danger, factoring in momentum and turning, and you have to mainly factor in what the enemies are going to do. That means you have to get a feel for what enemies sound like, when they spawn, what their bullets sound like. You have to get an idea of how fast they move, how hard they track you, and all that takes getting used to. So, you know, learning this game is kind of, you have to learn a lot more and memorize a lot more than you might realize for an action game. It's not just do the thing that's on the screen and react to what's given. You pretty much have to be constantly calculating for stuff that's off screen. And you have to fly preempting a lot of threats, which essentially means you memorize them, and instead of just reacting to what's on the screen, you use your long-term memory, which is kind of odd for an action game. They usually try to keep things within timing and reflex, but stressing so much long-term memory is a little bit odd. You can shoot a lot of targets when they're off screen, but then it takes away from the visual dramatic action and the important visual feedback. So destroying something really big off screen, the screen shakes a little bit, but you don't get to see it, and you don't know how well you're aiming half the time. And tons of the action is always happening off screen, so that's kind of a it's kind of a bummer when the action game is so action packed that you don't get to see the action. It's kind of like shaky cams in movies. Like, I kind of want to see what's happening. I don't want to see a shaky video cam. Certain things for too long is always a bad idea. Like that, you never want to fly backwards for too long. Oh, so now if you survive long enough and kill enough things, shoot. See, now I've been flying in one direction too long. I gotta change it. Now the sky is filled with a gigantic blimp. Golly! And I couldn't even show you because there's too many bullets. And I had no idea where the blimp was. It shoots tons of bullets. You know, I should have probably memorized something ahead of time and just gone low, but there was battleships below me. So I think that pretty much highlights another aspect of the game, that it's trying to kill you. This game is like Tetris or Geometry Wars or Pac-Man or whatever. It's designed to where you're supposed to get as far as you can in a relatively short session and shoot for a high score, but ultimately die trying. So there's not always a safe option when you play Luftrausers. There's not always a fair, like, good strategy to use. Sometimes you just get overwhelmed and it's nothing you can do about it. Sometimes even when you're memorizing stuff that's happening off screen, there's new things that spawn in or whatever and you die. There are many elements and enemies that give you no time to react, like an alien ship or being trapped by ace pilots when battling a battleship or a blimp. And as you just saw, I just battled a blimp, and it was kind of hard to deal with that, the ace pilot and the battleships below. So, you know, it's just the kind of game you're getting yourself into. But the main thing I want to leave off on for the final message is, for all the reasons we just discussed with Luftrausers, the lacking feedback, the lacking skill-based agency in certain situations, and the random elements, these are the things that make the gameplay raw. This is raw as it's a term that I'm coining. So I wrote a 4-part article series on raw game design, and it's a general term, but it's essentially it's a word that describes a gameplay experience that isn't very clear in terms of feedback, where your interactions are kind of muddy or not very distinct, and that kind of works against your ability to know what's good, what's bad, what's even happening in the game. And this could be a difficulty issue, a feedback issue, a tuning issue, a mechanics design issue, but it's just some combination of issues that make the end result a little bit unmanageable and chaotic and not so skill-based, and sort of, there's a lot of reasons how that can happen, but that's the general idea. So Luftrausers is a bit raw, and there are little to no discrete actions in the entire game, other than the amount of hits it takes to destroy enemies or your own player ship. The randomness makes similar scenarios hard to come by. The lacking feedback, audio and visual, make it hard to see what kind of scenario you're in, and the density of enemies and the difficulty ramp makes the whole experience quite raw. What are the pros and cons of raw design? What are the other points on the spectrum of raw to, you know, what's on the other end? This is a huge topic, and it's one that we will unpack over time. So that was it for Design Over Time. This is a video series where we will be tackling different design topics every day. So if you subscribe to the channel or follow us on Twitter at DesignOriented, or me on Twitter at KirbyKid, you can follow along in the conversation and make sure that your questions get heard. I might even answer them in video form if you get the questions in before Friday, so that's something you might want to do. Check us out. We will have new videos every weekday instead of daily. I should have said week daily, but that kind of sounds weird. We are looking forward to tackling other game design topics for the rest of the week. So I hope you enjoyed. Luftrausers is a cool game, and I will see you guys next time on the next episode of Design Over Time. Thanks for watching.